Hello, my name is Skylar Johnson, and this is my book report. Thank you. I chose to do my book on this book, This Is Your Brain on Sex, The Science Behind the Search for Love, by Katie Sukol. The author of this book is Katie Sukol, which I really hope I am pronouncing this right. Miss Sukol is a science and travel writer who has been published in a lot of nationally acclaimed news sites, such as the National Geographic and the Washington Post. Miss Sukol first became interested in how relationships and love began when she first had her firstborn son. It was also during this time that her marriage had begun to dissolve, and after circling the drain, as she would say, for a couple of years, she and her husband decided to go ahead and get a divorce. This book is called This Is Your Brain on Sex, The Science Behind the Search for Love. But, however, it was previously called Dirty Minds, How Our Brains Influence Love, Sex, and Relationship. The book's contents didn't change, so she just decided to rename the title in 2013. This book was also published by Simon & Schuster. I know it got a little cut off, but it was published in New York City, New York. I think this book is for people who are interested in sex and how relationships work, since that is the main topic of this book, but they can also be interested in brain and biology. I also think this book is more for college students or people with advanced learning than just like high school, because in the book she mentions a lot of the areas of the body and brain that you don't normally cover in high school, so it could be kind of hard to keep up if you don't know what you're talking about. Like on page 29, this is a quote from the book: "Just above the brainstem, below the thalamus and basal ganglia, is the hypothalamus. This little almond-shaped brain region has a critical function of mediating communications between the brain and endocrine system." She doesn't explain what the endocrine system is, so it could be kind of hard to relate what exactly she's talking to if you don't have previous experience on the subject. I don't think this is something that you can go to Walmart and pick up a book and be able to read through it in a night. The author, Katie Sukol, pretty much described to us that throughout the whole book that we don't know anything about love. We have know about sex. We've studied sex, especially with Masters and Johnson in the 1960s, but we don't actually know love. We didn't actually really start getting into it in 1994 with the work of Dr. Sue Carter when she was studying monogamy and prairie voles, and since then we've slowly been able to build on it. Throughout the rest of the book, Sukol hits on a number of other topics. For example, she talks about how the epigenetics and what we get from our parents. She talks about the neurobiology of attraction. And then there's also why we cheat and how monogamy helps and hinders our society. She references numerous studies, as you can see at the end of the book. There is a 10-page works cited. She also goes on about writing the book in a humorous way. She has lots of raunchy jokes and suggestions sprinkled throughout the book. I personally thought it was actually pretty funny. It was actually pretty interesting to read. It's not like a dry book. It's got some flavor to it. My favorite part of this was when they were studying the chapter 5, when we studied ourselves and primates and how our hormone levels are affected. And how they influence our lives. I like this section because I like the comparisons and similarities between the humans and primates. Dr. Kim Wallen and Chan Steffen studied the behavior of rhesus macaque monkeys in groups, in natural groups. They observe their groups and the sexual hierarchy within the groups. In another population, the graduate student Steffen observes a group of young females that had a neonatal appendectomy. It's the removal of the amygdala after birth, and the results that followed. These results were actually quite interesting. The monkeys that had the amygdala removed went through puberty earlier and had normal ovulation cycles. However, they did not solicit sex from males, which is very important for their standing in the hierarchy system. They just don't comprehend the social cues of mating. Now, obviously, we can not do this in humans, but it is fun to poke around and see how the brain works in the closest mammalian relative. However, there were some parts I was unsure about, as you can see in the picture above. It's pretty much what we learned in class, but this was more brain-based. What we learned in class was more cultural and social. It didn't really like go into the biology of it like a whole lot. Like in the beginning chapters it did, but more social and culture in the later chapters and the impacts it has on like different societies. This one was strictly focusing on the brain and then the subsidiaries of what would happen if it like trickled down to like different parts of your body. So it did, but it did not. I think that Miss Suko has lots of research experience. She definitely knows what she's talking about. There are a few opinions in there, but she does back them up with scientific evidence. So I'm going to go ahead and say that her book is pretty scientific. And the fact that she has like a 10-page works cited page. And she's presented at numerous conferences. She's been hosted to talk at different universities. She even participates in some of her research. You can see her next to a CAT scan where she tested organisms. She was helping test an orgasm research. And those are her brain scans as well. I think that she has a great amount of education and resources, which is why she's able to go to different universities and speak. I think that with her background and her knowledge and her passion for whatever she puts forward, she's able to present her research findings and present them in an articulate way. She also has a Bachelor of Science in Cognitive Psychology from Carnegie Mellon University and a Master's of Science in Engineering Psychology from the Georgia Institute of Technology. So I would say that she's pretty well educated in her field. There are some biases that I found within her work. I know this book is about your brain, but there are other parts of your body that goes into sexual encounters and sexual processes. So it would be nice if she talked about the other processes more than just focusing on the brain. Again, I know it's supposed to focus on the brain, but there is other parts that go into this. Another thing was who it was made for. I think she could have toned it down on the technical jargon. If you wanted to hit like, general population, they, again, like I said earlier, they might not realize what exactly certain things in the brain are, or certain hormones, or what they do, or the whole endocrine system. Lastly, at times it did seem more like she was just rambling. I know that, you want to keep it light and fun, but it was there were times where it kind of seemed like she was taking a dig at her ex-husband, rather than just reporting what you find. It was a bit subjective at times when it came to her personal relationships. She can also be a bit condescending, especially when we're talking about certain behaviors that are more social and not cognitive based. Another example is when she's explaining things, when she knows she should explain things, so she explains it, but she kind of makes it seem like you should already know this type of wording. Would I recommend this book to anyone else? I would. It's not an easy read. There are some things that I struggle with a little bit, but I mean, for the most part, it is actually a pretty good book. I mean, you see, I got my little wear and tear out of it. So yeah, it had some very interesting points. It made me feel more secure in my relationships and what I should be looking for. It also made me realize like different things that might be happening in my brain. If like, oh my gosh, he's hot. Well, this is this and this and everything like that. Again, weakness would probably be just trying to get through the book. There are some parts where she just goes off on rambles and it's kind of like, okay, wait, I gotta back up and try to find out where she was coming from with this and just connecting the dots. But other than that, it's a pretty good book. I like it. She also gives TED Talks. She also teaches at universities. She also has a new book coming out. I know I'm not trying to promote her book, but she has a new book coming out, and I think I might read it because it talks about risk-taking. And that might just be pretty interesting based on this book. So I'm glad I read it, and I thank this class for the opportunity to read the book. Thank you.